A little black girl is accused of theft and publicly humiliated in a high-end jewelry store. But as her desperate pleas go unheard, a powerful twist shakes everyone to the core. Her father owns the very store where she's being treated like a criminal. How far will a father go to seek justice for his daughter? It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and young Zoe Michaels was visiting her father's high-end jewelry store, Michaels & Company, Jewelry Boutique. Zoe loved coming to her father's store. She admired the glittering display cases, filled with sparkling necklaces, elegant rings, and delicate earrings. Each piece seemed like a small, precious treasure, and her father, Mr. Michaels, took great pride in the business he had built from the ground up. Today, Mr. Michaels was finishing up a meeting in his back office, leaving Zoe to explore the store. She was used to being there and knew the staff well. But today, a new saleswoman named Ms. Hardy was working. Zoe hadn't met her before, but she noticed Ms. Hardy kept glancing at her with a frown as she moved around the cases. Zoe's attention was captured by a particularly beautiful pair of diamond earrings, gleaming under the soft lights. She leaned in to get a better look, mesmerized by the way the light caught each delicate facet. She couldn't resist reaching out to pick up one of the earrings, holding it up to the light to admire it. But as she did, her fingers slipped, and the earring fell to the floor with a quiet clink. Instantly, Ms. Hardy rushed over, her face twisted with anger. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped, snatching the earring from the ground. She glared at Zoe, her eyes cold and accusatory. Zoe took a step back, surprised by the saleswoman's harsh tone. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to drop it," she stammered, trying to explain. "I was just looking." But Ms. Hardy wasn't listening. She crossed her arms, her gaze hardening. "I don't know what kind of place you think this is, young lady, but we don't tolerate thieves." Zoe's eyes widened in shock. "Thieves? I wasn't trying to steal anything. I was just looking at it." Ms. Hardy's expression remained steely. "Don't try to lie to me. I saw you. You were trying to pocket that earring, weren't you? Trying to take something that doesn't belong to you." Zoe felt a hot flush of embarrassment and confusion rising within her. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I wasn't stealing, I promise," she pleaded, her voice trembling. But Ms. Hardy had already made up her mind. Without another word, she pulled out her phone and dialed the police. "Yes, hello, I need officers at Michaels & Company. Jewelry Boutique immediately. I've caught a thief, a young girl trying to steal an expensive piece of jewelry." Zoe could barely process what was happening. She looked around, hoping one of the other staff members might step in, but they seemed stunned, unsure how to react. Ms. Hardy's confidence and authority silenced them, and Zoe felt entirely alone. Tears pricked her eyes as she looked up at Ms. Hardy, who remained unmoved, watching her with a look of disdain. "I'm telling the truth," Zoe whispered, her voice small and shaky. But Ms. Hardy's response was cold. "The police will deal with you. Thieves like you deserve to be punished." Moments later, the sound of police sirens grew louder, and 2 officers entered the store. Zoe felt her stomach drop as they approached her, their faces stern. Ms. Hardy immediately stepped forward, pointing at Zoe. "That's her. I caught her trying to steal a pair of diamond earrings." The officers looked at Zoe with suspicion, and without asking any questions, one of them pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "Hands behind your back, young lady." Zoe's heart pounded in her chest as they cuffed her hands, the cold metal biting into her wrists. "Please, I didn't do anything," she cried, but the officers remained indifferent, guiding her toward the door. Her mind raced, unable to understand how something so innocent had turned into a nightmare. As she was led out, tears rolled down her cheeks. She thought of her father, wondering how he would react, hoping desperately that he would come and save her. Outside, a few passersby had gathered, whispering and pointing as they saw the young girl being taken away in handcuffs. Zoe's face flushed with shame, and she hung her head, feeling the weight of the humiliation pressing down on her. Back inside, Ms. Hardy watched with a satisfied smirk, convinced she had done the right thing. To her, Zoe was just another troublemaker caught in the act. She had no idea that Zoe was the daughter of the store's owner, and that Mr. Michaels was about to walk in and witness his own daughter being treated like a criminal. Unaware of the storm that was brewing, Ms. Hardy returned to her duties, certain that she had handled the situation appropriately. Little did she know that her actions would have consequences far beyond anything she could have imagined. Zoe felt the weight of the handcuffs on her wrists, their cold steel pressing into her skin. Her cheeks burned with a mixture of embarrassment, fear, and confusion. The officers led her toward the front of the store, where customers and staff alike stared in shock. Whispers filled the air, blending with the sounds of the bustling city street outside. "I didn't do anything," Zoe pleaded, her voice barely a whisper as she looked up at the officers, but they didn't respond. Their expressions were blank, their focus fixed on leading her out of the store. Behind them, Ms. Hardy followed, her face twisted with self-righteous satisfaction. She folded her arms, watching as the police escorted Zoe away. "Thieves deserve what's coming to them," she muttered to herself, ignoring the shocked faces of the other staff members. To her, this was simply justice being served. One of the officers, Officer Grant, gave Zoe a cold look. "You're just lucky we didn't find more on you," he said, as though certain of her guilt. The other officer, Officer Blake, looked slightly uncomfortable but kept silent, letting his partner handle the situation. As they led Zoe toward the door, she heard a familiar voice, deep, steady, and filled with concern. "What on earth is going on here?" Mr. Michaels, Zoe's father, stood at the entrance, his gaze bouncing from the officers to his daughter, then back to Ms. Hardy, who looked suddenly uncomfortable. "Dad!" Zoe cried, relief flooding her voice. She struggled against the officer's grip, her eyes pleading for him to intervene. The officers looked at Mr. Michaels, momentarily thrown off by his authoritative tone. "Sir, this girl was caught attempting to steal an expensive piece of jewelry," Officer Grant explained, his voice clipped. Mr. Michaels's expression hardened. "This girl," he said, his voice low and deadly, "is my daughter, and I own this store." A hush fell over the store as the words sank in. Ms. Hardy's face went pale, her self-satisfaction vanishing in an instant. She stumbled back, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to find her words. I didn't know," she stammered, panic beginning to seep into her voice. Mr. Michaels's gaze shifted to Ms. Hardy, cold fury etched in his features. "Didn't know?" he repeated, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Didn't know that you accused an innocent child, my daughter, of stealing? Did you even bother to ask her what happened?" Ms. Hardy's hands shook slightly as she clutched her clipboard. I saw her with the earring in her hand. You thought, Mr. Michaels interrupted, his voice rising. "You thought you'd make assumptions about my daughter based on nothing? You called the police on her, my child, without a shred of evidence." He took a step forward, his towering figure casting a shadow over Ms. Hardy, whose face drained of color. "Sir," Officer Blake interjected, his voice tentative, "we were just responding to the call. We didn't know she was your daughter." "That doesn't change what you did," Mr. Michaels replied sharply, his voice filled with restrained fury. "You handcuffed an 11-year-old girl without even questioning her. You treated her like a criminal in her own father's store." The officers exchanged a glance, and Officer Grant's confidence began to falter. They looked to Ms. Hardy for support, but she was frozen in place, her eyes wide with dread. "Take those cuffs off her. Now, Mr. Michaels demanded. Without a word, Officer Blake quickly unlocked the handcuffs, and Zoe rubbed her sore wrists, relief washing over her. She hugged her father tightly, clinging to him as though he were a lifeline. Mr. Michaels gently stroked her hair, murmuring softly, "It's okay, Zoe. I'm here. This isn't going to happen again." He turned back to Ms. Hardy, his expression fierce. Ms. Hardy, you have shown nothing but disrespect and prejudice in my store. You've caused harm, humiliated my daughter, and acted without any sense of professionalism. Consider this your last day here. Ms. Hardy's eyes widened in horror. Sir, please, I was just trying to protect the merchandise, she stammered, desperately trying to justify herself. You have to understand. But Mr. Michaels shook his head, his decision unwavering. What I understand is that you assumed my daughter was guilty because of nothing but your own prejudices. You didn't give her a chance to explain. You didn't even ask. There is no place for that attitude in this store. Ms. Hardy opened her mouth to argue further, but Mr. Michaels raised a hand to silence her. I've heard enough. Gather your things and leave. The store was silent as Ms. Hardy gathered her belongings, her face pale and shaken. The humiliation she had so easily inflicted upon Zoe had now come back to haunt her. She cast one last pleading look at Mr. Michaels, but he didn't waver. As she left, the officers stood uncomfortably, uncertain how to proceed. Mr. Michaels, if there's anything we can do, Officer Blake began, his voice low. There is, Mr. Michaels replied, his gaze sharp. Start by rethinking how you handle situations involving children. And next time, question the story before treating someone as guilty. The officers nodded solemnly, avoiding Zoe's gaze as they exited the store. Zoe looked up at her father, grateful for his support. She felt safe again, but the experience had left her shaken. Mr. Michaels took her hand gently. Let's go to my office, Zoe. You don't need to be out here right now. As they walked back, Zoe glanced around the store, feeling the eyes of curious customers on her. She held her head high, finding strength in her father's presence beside her. She knew, deep down, that this experience would stay with her, but she also knew she was not alone. In the quiet of her father's office, Zoe took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She had been through something frightening, but with her father's support, she knew she could face anything. And little did she know, this ordeal was about to spark a movement that would go far beyond her family and create lasting change for everyone who entered Michaels and Company. As they sat in the office, Mr. Michaels tried to comfort Zoe, but the pain and anger from what had happened lingered in his eyes. Zoe leaned against him, still feeling the shock of the accusations and the humiliation of being handcuffed. Her father gently lifted her chin, looking into her tear-streaked face. Zoe, I'm so sorry this happened to you, he said softly. I should have been there sooner. I never imagined something like this could happen, especially here, in our own store. Zoe nodded, trying to be brave. I didn't do anything wrong, Dad. She wouldn't listen. Mr. Michaels hugged her close, silently vowing that no one would ever put his daughter through something like that again. As he held her, he heard the murmur of voices outside the office door. When he opened it, he found some of his longtime employees and a few loyal customers waiting, their faces showing concern. Mr. Michaels, one of his senior employees, Lucy, spoke up. We're all shocked by what happened. We had no idea Ms. Hardy would act that way, or we would have stopped her. A customer who had witnessed the incident chimed in. We saw everything, sir. It was unjust and cruel. Your daughter didn't deserve that. Mr. Michaels nodded, appreciating their words. Thank you, all of you, but this goes beyond just one incident. This is about ensuring that everyone who walks through these doors feels safe, welcome, and respected. The supportive crowd gave him a renewed sense of purpose. This incident wasn't just about Zoe. It was about creating a culture in his store and in his community that rejected prejudice and demanded accountability. He realized that he couldn't ignore the wider issues that had led to Zoe's mistreatment. Confronting the authorities. With Zoe by his side, Mr. Michaels left the office and walked directly to the two police officers who had detained her. The officers looked uncomfortable as Mr. Michaels approached, his expression calm yet filled with resolve. Officers, "I need to know why you didn't question the accusations before detaining my daughter," he said, his voice steady. "Do you have any idea what it's like for a child to be humiliated like that? To be treated like a criminal without cause?" Officer Blake looked down, clearly uncomfortable. "We apologize, Mr. Michaels. We were just following procedure based on the call we received. Ms. Hardy reported it as a theft in progress." Mr. Michaels took a deep breath, controlling his frustration. "And that's exactly the problem. You took one person's word and acted without any investigation. My daughter's only crime was being a child who was curious about the jewelry." The officers shifted uncomfortably. "We understand, sir, and we'll be sure to conduct ourselves differently in the future," Officer Blake said, sincerity evident in his tone. Mr. Michaels nodded, though he could tell their apology didn't erase the trauma Zoe had endured. "I'll be holding both of you and this entire precinct accountable. I won't stand by while innocent people, especially children, are treated this way." The officers left the store quietly, their expressions a mix of embarrassment and regret. Mr. Michaels turned back to Zoe, his eyes softening. "Let's go home, sweetheart. We'll put this behind us and work to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." The fallout for Ms. Hardy, just as Mr. Michaels and Zoe prepared to leave MS. Hardy returned to the store, visibly shaken. She approached Mr. Michaels with an air of defiance, despite the consequences she'd just faced. "Mr. Michaels, I did what I thought was right," she began, trying to justify herself. "That child looked suspicious. I was only protecting the store." Mr. Michaels took a step forward, his voice firm. "Suspicious? My daughter was simply looking at a pair of earrings. You didn't protect the store. You acted out of prejudice and treated her like a criminal without cause. You humiliated her and caused pain that no child should experience." Ms. Hardy's face flushed, but she attempted to defend her actions. "You can't fire me for following protocol," she snapped. "I thought she was stealing, and I acted accordingly." Mr. Michaels shook his head. "This isn't about protocol. It's about judgment, empathy, and respect, qualities you've shown none of. I will not tolerate this behavior in my store." Ms. Hardy faltered, realizing her words were falling on deaf ears. The staff and customers looked at her with disappointment, making it clear she would receive no sympathy. As she gathered her belongings, her arrogance faded into regret, the reality of her actions finally sinking in. Pledge for change. After Ms. Hardy left, Mr. Michaels gathered his staff together. His voice was firm, but his words were filled with a sense of purpose. "Today was a wake-up call for all of us. This is a place of business, but it's also a place where people should feel safe. No one should be judged based on appearance, age, or any other prejudice. From now on, our store will have strict guidelines to ensure that everyone is treated fairly, and that no one has to endure what Zoe went through." The staff nodded in agreement, grateful to work under a leader who valued integrity and compassion. They knew that changes were coming, changes that would make Michaels and Company a symbol of respect and equality. As Zoe looked up at her father, she felt a swell of pride. She had always admired him, but today, he had shown her the true meaning of standing up for what was right. Hand in hand, they left the store together, ready to begin the journey toward healing and change. The following morning, news of the incident at Michaels and Company jewelry boutique spread through the community. Many were shocked to hear that the owner's daughter, an innocent child, had been accused, humiliated, and handcuffed in her own father's store. The video captured by a few customers had gone viral, adding fuel to the public's outrage. Mr. Michaels had anticipated some attention, but he hadn't expected this level of response. Community leaders, friends, and local news reporters reached out, eager to support his call for change. People were horrified by the way Zoe had been treated and demanded that Ms. Hardy and the officers involved be held accountable for their actions. Mr. Michaels decided it was time to take a stand. That day, He gathered his daughter and a few trusted friends and headed to the police precinct to officially file a complaint against Ms. Hardy for her unjust treatment of Zoe, as well as to seek disciplinary action against the officers involved. The precinct lobby was busy, but the tension in the air was thick as Mr. Michaels approached the front desk with a determined look in his eyes. "I'm here to file a formal complaint," he announced to the receptionist, who glanced up and recognized his face from the news. She nodded quickly, guiding him to a nearby officer who took his statement. Mr. Michaels recounted every detail, Ms. Hardy's unfounded accusations, the officer's rush to judgment, and Zoe's humiliation. The officer took notes, his face growing more somber as he realized the gravity of what had happened. The arrest of Ms. Hardy. In the days that followed, investigators reviewed the footage and conducted interviews with witnesses who had been in the store. The evidence was undeniable, and the investigation concluded that Ms. Hardy's actions had not only been biased but also amounted to child endangerment and assault. Her actions had clearly overstepped any reasonable response to a perceived theft. A few days later, Ms. Hardy was arrested on charges of assault and filing a false police report. The news of her arrest caused a stir, sending a powerful message that prejudice and mistreatment would not be tolerated. Many in the community felt that justice was being served, and those who had previously felt voiceless found inspiration in the Michaels family's determination to stand up against injustice. As the police took Ms. Hardy away, Mr. Michaels felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about showing Zoe and everyone else in the community that there were consequences for unfair treatment. His daughter had been wronged, and though nothing could erase the pain she'd endured, he was determined to make sure it would never happen to her or anyone else again. Support from the community. In response to the incident, community members organized a rally in front of the store to show support for Zoe and the cause she now represented. People gathered with signs, chanting for justice, equality, and accountability. The event attracted media attention, with reporters capturing footage of the crowd and interviewing attendees who voiced their support for Zoe and Mr. Michaels. Standing on the store steps, Mr. Michaels addressed the crowd with Zoe by his side. "Thank you all for standing with us," he began, his voice carrying strength and gratitude. "What happened to Zoe was unjust, and while it hurt us deeply, we're determined to turn this pain into progress. My daughter deserves a world where people are seen for who they are, not judged by assumptions or prejudice." He took a deep breath, glancing down at Zoe, whose eyes were wide with pride. "From now on, Michaels and Company will be a safe place for everyone, a place where every customer and employee is treated with dignity and respect, and we'll continue to push for change, not just in this store, but across our community. Together, we can ensure that incidents like this become a thing of the past." The crowd erupted in applause, and Zoe felt a swell of pride as she looked at her father. He was not only defending her but also leading a charge for something far greater. She realized that what she had experienced was not in vain. Her pain had sparked a movement that would make a difference. As the rally continued, people shared stories of their own experiences with prejudice, inspired by Mr. Michaels' courage to speak out. The sense of unity and solidarity grew stronger, reminding everyone that they weren't alone in their struggles. The community was taking a stand together, determined to build a future where no one would be made to feel powerless or judged based on unfounded biases. A new policy for a new future. Following the rally, Mr. Michaels met with local officials to discuss reform initiatives that would promote fairness and accountability. With the support of the community behind him, he pushed for changes in local law enforcement protocols, advocating for better training on empathy and avoiding bias in their actions. His proposal included mandatory workshops for local police officers, emphasizing the importance of investigating claims thoroughly before resorting to drastic actions. Meanwhile, Mr. Michaels implemented new policies at Michaels and Company as well. All employees would undergo training on anti-bias and customer relations to ensure that respect was at the heart of every interaction. He wanted his store to become a model of how businesses should treat their patrons, setting an example for other establishments in the city. These changes resonated across the community, creating a ripple effect. Other business owners reached out to Mr. Michaels, asking for guidance on implementing similar policies, inspired by his dedication to building a safe and respectful environment. His actions showed that change was possible, and that every business and institution had the power to make a difference. With the incident behind them and reforms underway, Mr. Michaels and Zoe felt a sense of closure. Though the experience had left its mark, they had found a way to use it for good. The community was stronger, more united, and more aware than ever before. The weeks following the rally were filled with hope and momentum. The changes at Michaels and Company quickly set a new standard for customer treatment, inspiring other local businesses to adopt similar policies. Mr. Michaels worked tirelessly, organizing seminars for local shop owners, helping them understand how to implement practices that would create safe, respectful environments for all customers. Zoe, too, was adjusting to life after the incident. Although the experience had been traumatic, she saw the impact her story was having on the community, and it filled her with a newfound sense of purpose. Her father's strength, resilience, and dedication had taught her that even in the face of prejudice, one could rise above it and create meaningful change. Community transformed. One Saturday afternoon, the city held a celebration to honor Michaels and Company, and the positive changes the store had inspired. People gathered in the city park, with booths from local businesses showing support for the new anti-bias and respect initiatives. At the heart of the celebration was Mr. Michaels, who had quickly become a local hero. As he took the stage to address the crowd, he felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude. He looked out at the hundreds of people gathered, neighbors, customers, friends, and even strangers who had come to show their support. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice filled with emotion. "What happened to my daughter was painful, but together, we've turned that pain into something positive. We're here because we believe in a community that respects every individual, regardless of background or appearance. Today, we're celebrating the power of unity, the strength of standing together against injustice." The crowd applauded, and Zoe, standing next to him, beamed with pride. She felt her father's words resonate deeply within her. They were proof that her story had touched others, had made a real difference. "Every person here has the power to make change," Mr. Michaels continued. "Let's keep building a community that sees people for who they are, not what others assume them to be. We can, and we will, make our city a place where everyone feels safe and valued." A lasting legacy. Following the event, Mr. Michaels worked with local officials to implement citywide initiatives promoting anti-bias training for employees and law enforcement. These policies mandated workshops, ensuring that every worker and officer would be trained on empathy, respect, and recognizing unconscious biases. Zoe's story, which had initially sparked the movement, continued to inspire. Local news channels featured interviews with her and her father, sharing the journey they had gone through and the changes it had brought. Each interview ended with a message of hope and unity, encouraging viewers to treat others with kindness and understanding. For Zoe, seeing her story spread to others was empowering. She felt stronger, knowing that her experience had helped change her community for the better. She learned that, although the incident had been painful, it didn't define her. Instead, it was her resilience and her father's determination to fight for justice that shaped her future. Looking forward, over time, the incident became a well-known story in their community. It was a reminder of the importance of fairness and respect, and it strengthened the bonds between people. Michaels and Company became a model business known not only for its beautiful jewelry, but also for its unwavering commitment to dignity and equality. Customers felt valued and respected, and the store flourished with new visitors who wanted to support Mr. Michaels and his mission. One day, Zoe asked her father, "Do you think this will really help other people, Dad?" Mr. Michaels smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I know it will, Zoe. Because of you, people are more aware. And because of you, they'll think twice before making assumptions." Zoe nodded, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. She realized that her father had taught her one of life's greatest lessons, that standing up for what's right could lead to change, no matter how young or small she might feel. From that moment on, Zoe knew that her voice mattered. She dreamed of using it to help others, inspired by the strength she had discovered within herself and the example her father had set. The future of Michaels and Company. As the years passed, Michaels and Company remained a beacon of respect and justice within the community. Mr. Michaels continued his advocacy, speaking at local events and working with leaders to push for broader change. His commitment to his daughter's safety had evolved into a mission to protect and uplift every person in his community. And Zoe, now a young adult, became a passionate advocate for equality. Her experience had given her a sense of purpose, one that carried her into a future where she worked to make the world a kinder place. She knew her father's legacy, and the changes they had inspired together would be something she carried with her always. The city had been transformed, but so had Zoe and Mr. Michaels. They had faced a painful experience, but together, they had turned it into something beautiful, a testament to resilience, unity, and the power of standing up for what was right.